Just before they vanished, they smiled. Just before they betrayed you, they were soft, unusually gentle, but it wasn't love, it was strategy. Their kindness was not a turning point, it was a trapdoor. They didn't become kind because they changed. They became kind because they were leaving. The sudden sweetness was not a rebirth, it was a rehearsed goodbye. A performance meant to confuse your memory. They knew one thing: if they left you angry, you'd heal. But if they left you questioning, you'd stay haunted. This speech uncovers the hidden psychology behind that final kindness. It's not warmth, it's manipulation. It's not peace, it's anesthesia before the pain. You thought they were healing the bond. They were only softening the blade. The exit strategy masquerading as compassion. They weren't kind because they loved you. They were kind because they were leaving. Let that truth settle in your chest. The softness you received in their final moments wasn't affection. It was precision, a tactic. A move made by someone who didn't want the chaos of confrontation. Their sudden gentleness was not a rebirth of love, but a calculated silence before disappearing. You remember those moments, don't you? The sweet texts, the compliments, the moments where they suddenly seemed to see you again. You thought things were turning around. You thought the pain was finally being replaced with peace. But what you were really witnessing was the final layer of their disguise. Because people who genuinely care don't wait until the end to show it. They don't withhold tenderness until the moment they're halfway out the door. No, the truth is, they became kind when it was convenient, when it served them, when they needed your confusion more than your clarity. That final act of kindness was never for your healing. It was for their clean exit. They didn't want to face your tears, your questions, your realization. So instead, they handed you a bouquet of soft words to hold while they slipped away. And you stood there, stunned, trying to match their warmth with the timing of their vanishing. You kept asking yourself, if they didn't care, why were they suddenly so kind? That question has haunted you. That question has shackled you to memories that should have long been buried. But the answer is this: they weren't trying to make you feel better. They were trying to avoid looking like the villain. They crafted their exit to feel like a mercy when it was really a manipulation. Their smile was a curtain call. Their gentleness a smoke screen. They wanted to be remembered as the one who left with grace, not the one who wounded you. And the most tragic part, you mistook it for love. You thought their last minute affection meant there was hope. You held on longer, doubted yourself deeper, and questioned your worth harder, all because they knew exactly when and how to be kind. But now you know better. Now you see it. That kindness was the sharpest part of the betrayal. It was the part designed to keep you quiet, to keep you wondering, to keep you from closing the chapter fully. And maybe, just maybe, it worked for a while. But not anymore. Their exit strategy may have been laced in compassion, but it wasn't real. It was rehearsed. And now that you've seen it for what it is, you can finally let go, not just of them, but of the illusion they left behind. The curtain call disguised as change, it felt like they were changing, didn't it? For a moment, just before everything fell apart, they became everything you needed, thoughtful, gentle, attentive, as if they had finally understood your pain, finally decided to make things right. You saw it in the way they spoke softer, listened longer, even smiled with a kind of warmth you hadn't seen in ages. And in that softness, your heart whispered, maybe they're finally becoming who I always believed they could be. But here's the brutal truth, they weren't evolving. They were exiting. That sudden burst of kindness wasn't growth. It was closure, their closure. They were rehearsing their final scene, wrapping it in tenderness, so you'd never suspect the ending was already written. And the tragedy, you stayed longer because of it. You opened yourself one last time, thinking the story had shifted, but it hadn't. That last minute softness wasn't a turning point. It was a curtain call. A carefully crafted act meant to leave you disarmed, questioning, hopeful, until the lights went out and the silence swallowed the stage. People don't change in a flash. not truly. Real change is seen over time, through consistency, not through a week of kindness after a season of neglect. But they knew that sudden kindness could rewrite your memory. They knew if they left you confused, they could still live rent-free in your thoughts. And that's what they wanted. Not reconciliation, not repair, but a clean departure cloaked in the illusion of redemption. Because if they had left you in anger, you would have healed in clarity, but leaving you in kindness, that keeps you wondering, that keeps you tied. They knew how to play the part you'd waited so long for. And they played it just long enough to delay your healing, just long enough to make you question your own instincts. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe they were really trying. Maybe I gave up too soon. No, you didn't. You gave all of yourself to someone who saved their best performance for their exit. And now, every time you look back, you don't see the full weight of their neglect. You see the sparkle of those final days. That's the danger of the curtain call. It masks the whole show. But now you see it, don't you? It wasn't change, it was control. It wasn't love returning. It was a final illusion. And the moment you stop romanticizing that last performance, the healing begins. Because nothing they did in the end was for you. It was all about them. How they wanted to be remembered, how they wanted to leave, and how they hoped you'd stay stuck in that final, fabricated scene. But you won't. You'll remember the full story, not just the curtain call. And that is how you finally walk away. The numbness they needed you to feel, it wasn't kindness, it was sedation. That sudden sweetness, that strange gentleness near the end, it wasn't meant to heal you. It was meant to numb you, to soften your senses, to lower your defenses. It was a psychological sedative carefully administered so you wouldn't see the cut coming. And for a while it worked. You stopped questioning, stopped bracing, stopped resisting. You thought maybe, just maybe, the storm was over, but that calm wasn't peace. It was a silence designed to paralyze you emotionally. They didn't want you alert when they made their exit. They wanted you quiet, confused, and wrapped in a false comfort. They know how emotions work. They know the power of timing. They know that if they offer you just enough softness right before they disappear, it delays your reaction. You don't scream. You don't demand answers. You simply sit there silent, stunned, asking yourself if the hurt you feel is even real. And that is how they gain the upper hand. Because when you finally realize what they did, it's too late. The door's already closed. The mask has already fallen. They've already rewritten the ending in a way that makes them look gentle, and you look like the one who expected too much. You remember how their words shifted, how they said things like, "I want us to be in a better place," or "You deserve peace." But those weren't words of repair. They were words designed to dull the pain long enough for them to escape its consequences. They didn't fix what they broke. They just coated it with sentiment and walked away. And now you're left trying to reconcile that strange kindness with the heartbreak that followed. It's disorienting, isn't it? Because part of you wants to hold on to those soft moments. Part of you keeps replaying them, hoping they were real. But they weren't. They were deliberate. They were delivered like anesthesia before the operation, so you wouldn't feel the cut until it was over. That's the cruelty of it. Not just what they did, but how well they planned it. They knew exactly how to touch your soul just enough to keep you from fleeing, from fighting, from seeing clearly. That wasn't love. That was manipulation through tenderness. And the longer you stay frozen in that memory, the longer they win. But not anymore. Now you see it. Now you understand that what felt like healing was only a tactic, a momentary comfort meant to delay your awakening. But you're awake now. You feel the weight of what was hidden behind the softness. And you're done being sedated. You're done mistaking the anesthesia for the cure, because you're not confused anymore. You're finally clear, and that clarity is what they feared most. The peace they offered was a distraction. There's a silence some people offer, not to bring you calm, but to disarm you, and that's exactly what they did. Just when the tension should have snapped, just when your voice was finally ready to rise, they became calm, soft, even agreeable. They listened instead of talking, smiled instead of arguing, and for a moment it felt like peace, like maybe things were finally settling. But now you see it, don't you? That peace was never real. It was a distraction, a carefully chosen weapon to shift your focus, to keep you from noticing what they were really preparing for, the exit. They didn't want the chaos. They wanted the illusion of grace, and they knew if they met your rising voice with quietness, you'd second. Guess yourself. They wanted your defenses down. They needed you emotionally vulnerable, not because they wanted connection, but because they wanted control. And there's something tragic in how well it worked. You felt guilty for feeling pain. You hesitated to bring up what hurt you. You told yourself maybe they've changed, but that version of them, the soft, stable, peaceful one, only arrived when it was convenient. It only showed up when they were done taking. That's not growth. That's not maturity. That's strategic stillness. They quieted themselves not to meet you halfway, but to keep you guessing, to delay your instincts, because had they left in a storm, you would have healed in certainty. But leaving in calmness, that leaves you in conflict with yourself. You find yourself asking, maybe I was the problem. You start replaying moments, thinking maybe you misunderstood. Maybe you were too sensitive. But you weren't. You were finally seeing the truth, and they couldn't allow that. So instead, they offered false peace. They wrapped the ending in politeness and pacification, so you'd question the pain rather than confront it. But the truth doesn't need to be loud to be real, and the truth is, they silenced the storm not to protect you, but to protect their image. They knew you were getting stronger. They knew you were beginning to speak with clarity. So they beat you to the exit, disguised as peace, and now you're left carrying a strange contradiction. The last memory you have of them isn't a fight. It's a smile. It's not war, it's quiet. And that makes it harder to close the door. Because the mind wants to believe the last impression, but your soul remembers what led to it. Don't forget that. Don't let their final softness erase the weight of what came before, because that peace wasn't a gift, it was a tactic. A silence designed to keep you from slamming the door behind them. But now you know, and now you choose clarity over comfort. You choose truth over illusion, and you reclaim your voice, even if their silence tried to bury it. The doubt they left behind was their final control. They didn't want to be remembered as the villain. That's why they were kind right before the end. That's why they didn't slam the door, didn't yell, didn't let the truth rip through the room like it should have. No, instead, they left quietly, with a soft voice and a half-smile. They gave you just enough gentleness to leave you wondering, was it really that bad? That's how they kept a piece of you, not through cruelty, but through confusion. You see, some people don't want closure, they want control, and what better way to control the story than by offering kindness at the edge of the knife? It's a masterstroke of emotional manipulation. They knew if they left you in doubt, you'd keep rewriting the story in your mind. You'd stay up replaying their last words, their last touch, their final look. And every time you did, the lines would blur. You'd begin to question your own memory. You'd think, maybe I overreacted. Maybe they meant well. But deep down, you know the truth doesn't change because someone says it kindly. You know betrayal isn't softened by a smile. But they were counting on your heart to override your mind, because when someone leaves you in rage, it burns clean. But when they leave you in doubt, it lingers. It wraps around your thoughts like smoke. It clouds your judgment, and worst of all, it keeps you stuck. That's what they wanted. They wanted to live on in your memory, not as the one who hurt you, but as the one who tried, as the one who wasn't so bad in the end. And that's what makes it so hard to let go. Because they didn't leave you with wounds, they left you with questions, but now you see it. That final kindness wasn't love, it was legacy. It was the careful shaping of the narrative they wanted you to carry. They wanted to haunt you not as a monster, but as a maybe, and for a while they did. But not anymore. You're done living in the fog they left behind. You're done giving meaning to moments that were manufactured. Because love doesn't just arrive at the end. It doesn't suddenly appear when everything else has already broken. If it was real, it would have been consistent. If it was truth, it wouldn't need to be remembered in fragments. So let the doubt burn out. Let the questions end here. They crafted that final kindness to live in your memory. But now you're rewriting the ending. You see their strategy for what it was. Not compassion, but control. And today you choose clarity over confusion, truth over tone, peace over performance. You don't need their soft goodbye to feel whole. You just need your truth. And that's finally enough.